Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Michael Sandoval and Chris Tetzel. This podcast starts now. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Sandoval.
And again, I'm the second host, Christopher Tetzel.
But of course, you're never just second, sir. You're always first.
True. We said this exact same thing on the last podcast.
Did I tell you that you were first?
Yeah, in alphabetical order,
Oh, okay. That's what I did. Okay.
I just listened to it and posted it for tomorrow, so that's why it's fresh on my mind.
Well, that's very, very kind of you. We were just talking about our weekend plans and kind of doing the pre-show as we always do, but because spring is coming up. Yeah, spring. It's just
not this weekend, but anyway.
Yeah, it is. Oh, wait, no, spring. We just went through spring this past week.
Yeah,
21st.
It's been nice here in Dallas.
Is it? Oh, finally. Yeah. I used to love the springs in Dallas. Here, it's just the windy season. I say by the end of the month it'll probably be fine, but we have a good, glorious 4 weeks of just you can sit outside in patio weather, and it's just with restaurants and the like. I think it's finally starting to open up a little bit, so you can sit on the patio. It feels nice. How was in Dallas like this with COVID? There was never probably any difference.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't. And now it's all open. People can. You don't even have to have a mask in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We were talking a little bit about beers for next weekend, not this weekend, but for next. So some people are coming to town that we used to work with, and you're coming to Dallas. And so I'm looking forward to having beers with you.
Yeah, me too. I don't know if we can do an impromptu
in a safe way. Yeah.
Yes. We'll probably be at least within 6 feet of each other. That's too funny.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're talking about what to talk about this week, and the thing that I go to is this idea of what are you working on, and I think last week I had kind of given a thought a statement that I had finished up a business plan, and I was pretty proud of it. It went very well. Very well when you present it to your C's, your C levels, and there's this silence that comes afterwards, and I'm like,
uh-oh.
Yeah, usually get something. Okay, well, thank you very much. It was just like silent for a little bit, and I was like, and then,
yeah,
and I had to break it. I said, I said so like, gentlemen, I usually don't get a response like this. Who would like to be the first?
I say I don't get a response like this. That means no response. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Usually I get a response. I think that's what I said. Usually I get a response.
Yeah.
Who would like to be the first to say something?
Sounds good, Michael. Go with it.
That's pretty much what it
was. We don't know.
Yeah. We don't know. It looks good. Yeah. No, so one of the things we talk about, and I think I spent some time doing these, when I talk about it in framework, they always seem easy when you look at the framework, but then when you start kind of digging in, you're like, oh man, this is pretty laborious. The way I set it up was, and you've seen presentations like this from some of our mentor of ours, right? Devastation. It was about stating the problem. What does the roadmap look like to go do that? What is the team that has to be developed being, to bring in to do that? What is the cost associated with all this that you plan to do? And then what's the ROI? Yeah, typically,
even tougher.
What are you going to get back?
ROI is really the tough one, right?
That's where I spent most of my time. Right, it was all data, right? And the other part I spent a lot of time was.
But you're really good at that stuff, and so. But
I appreciate it. I can dig into it. It just takes time, and so the reason I brought it up was there was such a difference from a financial industry perspective versus what I was so used to, and I even mentioned this. I had a chance to talk to Devastation, and I mentioned even to my C levels that I have been so used to looking at business cases from a web perspective. When you're trying to sell widgets or even as a service, right? I can talk about, channel and channel acquisition, numbers of folks coming in, conversion, average order value, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then you can put that into a formula and everything comes out. This is different. The way, somebody said the easiest way to, they said the banking industry is really simple, but it's also incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
You take in deposits and then you lend those out, right? It's pretty
Yeah.
simple. You make money off of the delta, right? And it seems simple, but it is so damn complicated to all the details. So the way I was trying to figure out the ROI was to say, hey, how many I had to actually go back to tell you how deep I had to go. I had to go look at, every bank has to give their earnings to the government. So I had to go into those numbers for 3 years, pull do a trend, analysis and then kind of output. And then I had to put in my numbers. Like what do I expect to grow in a do nothing scenario,
Hmm.
a halfway scenario, and then of course, if we were to do everything, what would that look like? And it's it's not accurate clearly because there's a lot of value, there's a lot in there. But you have to look at
What if you get close
number of
to it?
people you can bring in, how much money they would deposit, what would be the amount that we would gain from those deposits as a result. It was some there was some I had to go deep into this. It was pretty fascinating. And so
Did you
when
get
they looked
somebody to
at that,
help
I
you
think
do
they were
some of that?
no, I just did it myself.
Oh, okay. You'd be like,
And I even told him, I said, listen, and one of the C levels is the
CFO.
CFO, and I even kind of preface it. I know you're going to dig right into it, and you're going to ask a lot of questions. Just settle down, right? And I even said, hey, and if they were aggressive, of course, and they made one option look better than the other. So clearly, you'd want to go for option C versus option B. And they said, well, those are aggressive numbers. I said, even if you divided it by two, just even if my numbers are off by half, you know, I think the bottom line is that there's potential growth, right? And that growth is definitely quantifiable. And even if you reduce these numbers, I'm off 75%. The numbers are still very strong, And they were like, yeah, we can't argue the way the approach that you came about, right? And so one of the things that why this is valuable here
Yeah.
is for two reasons. One is we always talk about how do you if you're in a C-level conversation, how does that work? And it's a very simple thing, right? It's what's the problem, how are you going to fix it, and what's the result. It's a very simple thing, but of course that takes a lot of.
Yeah, it's not easy to go
It's not
do
an
all
easy
of that.
thing, right? You have
Yeah.
kind of and you have to make a simple message, that kind of stuff. And the the other bit here was around just the expansion. Like how do you like the strategic thing here is very similar to what we talk about is as our B2B companies are growing. So part of the challenge we have, what's great about community is that you can bring in more customers and use community as a support mechanism to service more with less, right? And I hate to say that term, but you get to maybe save some of those resources to support, say, some of your higher tier clients, and then you can use more mass market support like community and the like for self-service, and that's becoming more and more of a need, almost a necessity. You would probably make that same argument with your company right now.
Yeah.
And so it's happening on the financial sector too. So how do you expand with less footprint is kind of what it is. Banks are very much a high investment because you have to put a physical presence somewhere, right? You always see a bank going up in a corner. That's cost. And as more and more folks are becoming more online, you have to look at digital and what does that digital look like? What does that experience look like? So that's what's been fascinating about this ride is how do you expand a financial institution that comes from paper? I mean, I think when they were describing it to me, I thought it was very interesting, the analogy they made. It says, Mike, you have to understand, banking came from paper. Literally, we give paper to somebody in the form of money. we would give a receipt. They would come in with a book. It would as they validate. Like that's where we came from. And I went, oh, that said a lot, right? So moving that digital transformation has been very very interesting. So it got approved, which is very fun.
Which one? Option A, B, or
Oh
C?
yeah, of course they well the all you can eat version.
Oh,
And
that's awesome,
oh,
and
which
a
is
lot of
great.
pressure.
Yeah, and it was.
Uh,
Yeah, well, yeah. Now it's kind of like, oh, I gotta go build this stuff now. Oh, okay. Oh,
but
yeah.
that's the fun part, man. I mean, it's
Oh,
hard,
that's the
but
fun
it's
part.
fun.
Yeah, that's actually
It's
So I
like
was
all
already
the
talking
stuff you're
to.
doing, like to me is like, oh my God, I really got to dive into this. But then, go and talk to the vendors, hiring people, and then, hiring people is probably kind of tough, but, and especially, I assume in El Paso, probably a little harder, but, you can, like you said, you've got people that are willing to learn something new within the organization already, so that's positive. I'm sure you'll use some of that, but you have to go out and get other talent, but
Very,
you know
very good. You're absolutely correct. I think one of the things we talked about was one of the things that a big city like, say, Dallas, there was not a talent pool problem, right?
yeah.
And it's great because that raised everybody up. There was competition, but it has other effect. It has there's a run on some salaries. But
Mm,
here, I think one of the things that drove me here, and I think I talked about this, is that being from here and knowing this always being technology is not the number one thing that El Paso delivers. I will say that.
yeah.
It's one of
Right.
the things. Great Mexican food, by the way. Uh, is to
I'm
help in
positive if that's true.
it really is to kind of build that base, right?
Yeah.
Can you help your fellow community kind of lift the competency up a bit? So I'll have to teach, right? And I'm pretty good at that.
You're really good at that,
Yeah, but
but it
it'll
takes
take time.
time. Yeah.
It'll just take time. It's an investment, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, so that's kind of, I just wanted to say that was what I was working on. I thought that was kind of fun and exciting. And even got a chance to talk to, so now the search begins, right? Which is like
Yeah.
going from the beginning, like journey mapping and user experience stuff and
Mhm.
personas. And then we'll figure out what that looks like from a web redesign or back end
So I mean,
stuff.
is that the kind of people you'll be hiring? Is like somebody to a UX UI team, development team? I don't know. I mean, are you able to source some of that out? Is that a possibility?
Yep.
I
In fact,
assume.
yeah. Really what I need right now are just warm bodies that can get into a system and do shit, right? And
Yeah.
that's so pretty much some of
I
my
wouldn't even
team
know where
are
to start, to be honest. Like, I think.
warm bodies.
No, I mean, just like, where do you start building? Because you said pretty much everything is from ground up. Digital
Yeah,
kind of.
no, that's the conundrum I'm in, man. Like it's literally what do I do first?
Yeah.
And so, in fact, when I had to do a roadmap as part of the presentation, I was literally sitting here going, "The hell do I do first?" I'll do website first. No, that doesn't work.
Well, I think
You know.
I think that the opportunity for you, and I'm sure you have, but to talk to a peer or two, or somebody like a Devashish or whatever, I'm sure happy to kind of guide you in some of those ways. Look, I'm sure you have some ideas. I mean, obviously you're really smart about that stuff. But if I were in your shoes, because this is what I do anyways, is I go to my peers to see exactly kind of how they did it, what they're doing, and that kind of stuff. So, or even digital peers. It doesn't have to be banking, but although that would be helpful, I'm sure.
Yeah, no,
So,
you actually, one of the things I do learn from you is that you do that, and I tend to. So the way I kind of work on problems, it's funny how you and I work on problems differently, right? So the way I
yeah.
work on problems is I go right into research, right? I start digging into books, I look into white papers and pull up research, and I like
Yeah.
go really deep, and then I spend some
Smart.
time kind of collapsing ideas, and I go, aha,
Got it.
I got it. Where I think what I one of the things I am learning from you is that hey, the people have already solved this problem.
Yeah.
Um, Reach out to them and spend a few minutes talking with them, chit chatting with them, and that kind of germinates your ideas.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. So when you look back on when we worked together, I didn't do a lot of networking only because I didn't know like anything about building. a community online. Like I understood community and things like that, but I didn't understand the digital world. Does that make sense? Like
Mm.
it was just completely different, and I had to learn e-commerce type stuff, and so that was new. And then just trying to understand the team and the dynamics. So the positive is, I think you probably realized that. Um, I know Devish just realized that because I was very honest with him
Yeah.
about things. I was like, I just don't even know what these people are talking about. Like at first, like okay,
I know
like,
what they're saying.
but I mean, I was very blunt. I was like,
I
I've
just wrote
never
some
worked in
shit down.
e-commerce. I just, yeah, and I mean, for the first probably month or two at least, I was just, I mean, we were going through a roadmap. Hey, we have to do this and this. I didn't even know what a roadmap was, because I never did any of that, and
Mm.
you know so I didn't connect to peers then. The nice thing is that you already knew what you're doing. Jeff has some ideas of what he was doing,
Yeah.
the developer on our team, and you know so I just learned by you and asking you questions, and you're for the most part pretty patient with me. And you'd push me at times, you know and then when I went to Imperva, um it was then like I had to do this by myself. Like I had no one to build an online community. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I had some ideas because I wrote everything down. I had old PowerPoints. And so I really had some ideas on how to do it. But, I struggled quite a bit, and probably took me 11 months for not only because of my own reasons, but from the day I got there um, to standing up the community was up in 11 months. Look, I mean, we just got bought by Tom Bravo, so that wasted 2 months, couldn't even start the
Oh, that's right. You
conversations.
did
And,
have that the
and
kind of
then our
interesting one.
company had a breach, and so I had to delay it another month, and so, I mean, there was
Swoosh.
some things there. But in this company, I'm doing the exact same thing, and I'm going to have it up in 4 months. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so, but the point was when I went to Imperva, I was collaborating with peers as much as I can. I was asking questions like after question, talking to people after talking to people. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to try this or I'm going to try that. And then I also had a service with Higher Logic that, they had kind of templates to say, hey, we have to go do these things. And some things I already knew, but I didn't want to go do because it was really hard. But, the person there, even she works with me today, was like, no, we have to go do this. I mean, like seeding content from customers. I was like, yeah, but that's really hard. Yeah, but you have to have customers.
Yeah.
so, um, so you learn as you go, and it's really difficult at first. But what I did learn was a lot from my peers, especially on the Imperva journey, and especially and then before that was from you, right? So I don't know if there's a point to that, but you know,
No, no, so the way I kind of get the point was it's around it's it is experience, right? So one of the things I think that's spurred up even our podcast, right, which was you had a lot. So the going back to when you said we'll have a lot of questions, right? So you would ask
yeah,
these questions, and we would sit there and we would chit chat literally kind of over the cube, and then I would sense like still some confusion. Like, well, let's just take it to the whiteboard.
yeah.
I can explain it that way, and I knew that when
As a
you know,
visual learner, that's the way I am, anyways.
yeah. So okay, if I can give this information, then I know that your brain, and not just you, you'll just move on to the next
Yeah,
challenge, right? You'll just kind of move up, um, and that's what you have to do, right? That's part of the
hmm
experience. So now that you have that, you can accelerate that. So it almost
yeah,
it makes sense. You're going from like it took a year and a half, whatever, Excel. Then you have 11 months, and now you're at 4. A lot of that has to do with automation and and some of the
yeah.
things that you're using.
Well, that's
But
true.
it becomes a lot. You now, okay, I got to go do this. I got to do this. I got to go do this.
Yeah, it's a little easier. Like there's always challenges, I think, with building communities or building a whole entire digital kind of you know what you're doing. I mean, just building the whole entire thing. That sounds fun, exciting, but really difficult. you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah.
no, it does. I'm not
It
trying
stresses.
to.
And it's funny because it stresses. Like, there's moments where I get stressed out where, like,
Yeah,
I go, because the one, when at least like you can always go to someone and ask a question. Am I doing this right? In this case, I'm like, it's so brand new. You're like, you're the first one doing it. So you're like, well, shit, I don't have the answers. No one, I don't have the teacher's edition.
Yeah, there's nobody in your organization. Well, I think the higher up you go, and even in my role, there's nobody in my organization at any organization that I've been at except for Rexel that knows anything about what I'm doing. They don't, you know, vendor selection, getting people excited about the community, what the value of community brings, how to get seed content, how to build new content. I mean, it's a lot of stuff, right?
I bet you. Now I'm just here thinking about it as I spitball. I bet you if we put our brains together, we could probably come up with like a playbook,
Ooh,
like a Kickstart community playbook. Nothing necessarily verbose, just a simple like, here are the 5 things you got to do and where you could start, and talk about the experience, like just the simple playbook. It's a very easy.
I like it. Maybe we do it on the podcast or something, and
Yeah, I mean,
kind of create some content around it,
yeah,
like
yeah. I mean,
written
it
content or
can't
whatever.
be. I mean, and the playbook can be like.
You know what I like about the playbook? I know you're kind of thinking, so
Yeah,
I'll say some
you
stuff
hear my
outside.
brain going check 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 check.
But is is there a lot of different aspects to really focusing on community when you first build? So
Sure.
that's where my expertise are, anyways. Is when you build one from scratch, and so you got to think about engagement strategy from an internal standpoint. So how do you get
Mm-hmm.
people excited? Because a lot of those people are going to be the ones answering questions and creating those blogs and things like that. Of course, you try to make that easy, and you talk about that piece. How do you get people excited? What do you do? That's a whole kind of session or two, on its own. And then two is the content strategy, for your customers and for your partners, and if this is a customer community, right? So what does that look like? You know, um, and where do you get that content, and how do you make it engaging? Those kinds of things. And then there's an engagement strategy, or integrate say engagement strategy for your customers, and so whether it's getting them whether you're rewarding, recognizing them and things like that. So there's a whole series on that. I mean, we've talked about some of this stuff, but we've never really put it into a um, playbook, if you will.
Yeah,
And
and it's funny as you talk through it, like there's complementary things, right? So like what you were describing was you have the community approved, and now you're going to go. It's assumed it's going to get built, right? And you just
oh,
kind of have to think
got
of these
it,
things, right? In my head, also,
got
I'm
it.
thinking about like, what if you recognize there's a need, and how do I build it? Or the other way, which is I've been hired to go build a community. What do I need to do?
That's the aspect I came from, but
Yeah, that's the aspect you came from, right?
I like the I like that is you know how do you one you have this idea of building a community or building a digital whatever, and so now you've got to present it and build all the pieces to present that in front of, I don't know, executives or people that can
Yeah,
buy into
hell, this
that.
playbook can have like the PowerPoint demo.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
fill in your
So
name.
yeah, this sounds interesting for sure. I like it.
Yes. We'll have to say that when we're next time.
Yeah,
So our next podcast will be on the playbook. But alas, well, Chris, as always, I enjoyed talking with you, and we'll get a chance to. Well, I don't think we're uh, next Friday. I'll be in Dallas, so we'll have to figure out the schedule. But as
yeah.
always, it's a pleasure chit chatting with you. Thank you for another fine episode of Peers Over Peers. My name is Michael Sandoval.
And I'm Chris Detzel.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. Talk to you later.
All right.